Now let me take you back to January 24, 1865, a bitter cold afternoon in Washington. Joseph Henry, the first secretary of the Smithsonian, is working in his second-floor office inside the iconic Castle building on the National Mall. He hears a crackling above his head. Within minutes, the building is engulfed. A stovepipe had been inserted into a wall cavity instead of a flue days earlier. Embers had been smouldering inside the walls undetected. When the fire finally broke through, it consumed the picture gallery, the apparatus room, the lecture hall, the regent's room, and Henry's entire office. Destroyed in hours were over 200 irreplaceable oil paintings of Native American leaders by artist John Mix Stanley. All of James Smithson's personal effects, his manuscripts, his minerals, his scientific notes, gone. Nearly 100,000 letters and reports documenting the institution's first 2 decades of research, every piece of founding correspondence, every early intake record, every collection log from 1846 to 1865, all of it ash. The New York Times called it a national calamity. And I want you to understand why this matters for everything that comes next. When researchers today ask the Smithsonian to account for specific items received during those first 19 years, the answer is always the same. We have no records, not because they were never created, because they burned. In a building dedicated to the preservation of knowledge, the foundational records of that knowledge were destroyed. And there is no independent way to verify what walked through those doors and what didn't during the Smithsonian's most formative years. But the real story begins in 1879, when Congress creates the Bureau of Ethnology within the Smithsonian and appoints a man named John Wesley Powell as its director. Powell was a Civil War veteran who lost his right arm at the Battle of Shiloh. He was famous for leading the first expedition down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. He was brilliant, ambitious, politically connected, and he had a very specific vision of what American history was supposed to look like. In 1882, Congress gave Powell 5,000 and a direct mandate: investigate the mound builders. Thousands of massive earthwork structures stretched across the eastern United States, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Enormous burial mounds, some containing chambers, vaults, artifacts of copper and mica, and unknown alloys. And inside many of them, bones. Bones that didn't match anything in the established record. The American public was captivated. Who built these structures? What civilization existed here before? What happened to them? Powell's answer was decided before the investigation began. He appointed a man named Cyrus Thomas to lead the Division of Mound Exploration. Thomas was an entomologist, a bug specialist, not an archaeologist, not an anthropologist. A man who studied insects, given authority over the most significant archaeological question in American history. Thomas spent 12 years on the project and published his conclusions in 1894. Over 700 pages that said exactly what Powell wanted them to say. Native Americans built the mounds. No lost civilization. No anomalous remains. No further questions necessary. Case closed. But Powell didn't just close the case on the mounds. He closed the door on an entire category of inquiry. He issued directives through the Bureau declaring that no anthropological research should consider theories of lost tribes or pre-Columbian contact with other civilizations. He wrote that any pictographic or artifactual evidence from before Columbus was, and this is his word, illegitimate for historical purposes. Think about what that means. The director of the Smithsonian's Anthropology Division declared that evidence predating a specific date was inadmissible, not because it was examined and found lacking, because it was categorically excluded from consideration. He didn't investigate and find nothing. He decided what the conclusion would be and then constructed the investigation to confirm it.